His sea was endless, a dark mirror of the sky, cold and merciless as it stretched toward the edges of the world. Imagine being left alone at the rim of civilization, where ice meets ocean and storms never sleep. Imagine arriving at a desolate island, far from warmth and human comfort, believing you are there for a job of science, for the noble task of observing weather and keeping records, only to discover that the air itself carries secrets more chilling than the Antarctic winds. That is where this story begins, at the edge of the Antarctic Circle, where one man discovered that survival means more than food and fire. It means confronting the monsters that come from the sea, and the monsters hidden inside one's soul. If you love stories of mystery, horror, and survival, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to hear is a tale that grips the heart and won't let go until the very last breath. The young weather official arrived with hope, though his eyes were heavy from weeks at sea. His mission was simple, at least on paper. 1 year stationed on the island, recording winds and temperatures, observing storms, a post that seemed quiet compared to the chaos of the world beyond. But from the moment the ship left him behind, and the cries of seabirds echoed against the towering cliffs, silence pressed down on him like a weight. The only other human on this rocky fortress was the lighthouse keeper, a rough man named Gruner, whose face bore the lines of too many winters and whose eyes seemed to carry a permanent storm. Their meeting was not warm. Gruner was guarded, speaking little, and the younger man felt at once that something was wrong here, something unspoken lingering in the salty air. The cabin that was meant to be his home was weathered and cracked, standing against the wind like a tired soldier. He entered, set down his meager belongings, and tried to imagine days filled with nothing but measurements, writing, and solitude. But the first night shattered that fragile illusion. As darkness fell, and the sea groaned beneath the weight of waves, he heard noises outside, slaps against the walls, the scrape of claws, guttural cries that did not belong to the wind. When he peered through the cracks, he saw shapes moving in the night, too many to count, crawling and leaping like shadows born of water. Then the attack came. Creatures rose from the sea, their bodies slick and scaled, their eyes luminous like dying embers. They hurled themselves at his cabin, tearing through the wood, snarling with inhuman rage. He fought back, desperation guiding his hand as he fired his weapon, striking down one, then another, the recoil numbing his arms. But there were too many. His cabin splintered under the assault, and he knew he would not last the night. In terror he fled, stumbling across the rocks toward the lighthouse, where light cut through the storm like a sword. Gruner stood there, waiting, as though expecting him. Without a word the old keeper pulled him inside, slamming the door shut just as the creatures swarmed the outer walls. Together they fought, side by side, firing into the night, their bullets finding slick bodies that fell back into the waves. The younger man's heart pounded with both fear and disbelief. What were these things? Where did they come from? But Gruner only growled, reloading with the calm of someone who had done this countless times before. When the dawn came, and the creatures slipped back beneath the ocean surface, the island was stained with their blood. Exhausted, the young man turned to Gruner for answers, but found only silence. The lighthouse keeper offered no explanations, only whiskey and a warning: this is how it is here. They come every night. They always come. If you wish to live, you fight. Questions are useless when the sea itself spits out nightmares. Days bled into nights, and nights into days, each one marked by the relentless rhythm of attacks. The younger man tried to keep his scientific duties, writing observations of clouds and wind, but the cries of the creatures haunted him. He could not look at the sea without imagining them lurking beneath. Gruner, meanwhile, hardened him with harsh words and harsh drink, forcing him to fight, to kill without hesitation. But as weeks passed, the younger man noticed something strange: hesitation in Gruner's eyes, secrets hidden in the way he retreated into the lighthouse's shadows. Then he saw her. At first, he thought she was one of the creatures captured for study, but what he found was something far more disturbing. A female of their kind, held in chains, her luminous eyes filled not with rage, but with sorrow. Gruner called her Anaras, treating her as both servant and possession, a twisted mockery of companionship born out of isolation. To the younger man, She was proof of something more. These creatures were not mindless beasts, but beings with emotions, with intelligence. Every night they fought and killed her kin, yet here she was, breathing, bleeding, gazing at him with eyes that seemed almost human. The line between monster and man began to blur. Conflict raged within him. Was he defending himself from a threat, or partaking in a slaughter of creatures defending their own? He began to study them, watching their movements during attacks, noticing their cries were not only of rage but of grief, as though they mourned their fallen. Gruner despised this softness, mocking his compassion, insisting survival left no room for pity. But the younger man could not silence his conscience. The world outside this island had waged wars over land, race, and power. Was this not the same, another cycle of hatred born of misunderstanding? As the year dragged on, storms grew harsher, attacks more violent. The creatures seemed to sense their kin's suffering, returning in greater numbers, their cries echoing like dirges through the night. Trapped in the lighthouse, man and boy fought with fire and gunpowder, their bodies aching, their minds breaking. Yet in stolen moments, the young man spoke with Inaras, teaching her words, gestures, kindness. In her eyes, he saw not an enemy, but a mirror, both of them trapped, both longing for freedom. Gruner's cruelty grew darker. Jealous of the bond forming between his companion and the young man, he lashed out, raging against both man and creature alike. He had lived too long in hatred, his humanity eroded by isolation until he became the very monster he believed he was fighting. One night, during a particularly vicious assault, the young man saw Gruner not as a comrade but as a tyrant, drunk on his own despair, clinging to violence as the only language left to him. The final battle came with fury. Waves crashed against the rocks as hundreds of creatures emerged, their glowing eyes filling the night like stars torn from the heavens. The lighthouse shook under their assault, walls cracking, fire bursting in violent eruptions as explosives lit the darkness. Man fought against tide, against creature, against himself. In the chaos, Gruner's madness reached its peak, and he sought to destroy them all, even Inaras, blind to any possibility of peace. But the younger man made his choice. He stood between Gruner and the last remnant of compassion, firing not at the creatures, but at the one human who had lost all sense of humanity. When dawn broke, the sea was stained red, bodies floating like broken shells. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Gruner was gone, lost either to madness or to the sea itself. The young man, bloodied and weary, stood at the lighthouse with Inaras by his side. In her gaze, he found not victory, but survival, fragile and uncertain. He had come to the island to observe storms, but had instead weathered the storm within his own soul. He understood now that monsters are not born of scales or fins, but of hatred, fear, and loneliness. The year passed, and a ship finally came to relieve him of duty. But as the crew approached, they found him standing tall at the lighthouse, eyes hardened by the weight of truth. He did not board. He stayed, taking the post of lighthouse keeper, for he knew the fight was not yet over. He had crossed a threshold that could never be reversed. And so the cycle continued, the sea forever whispering its dark secrets, the island forever caught between man and monster, survival and surrender. It was no longer just a tale of horror, but a lesson written in blood and salt, that the greatest terror lies not in the creatures we battle outside, but in the shadows we carry within. If this story of Cold Skin 2017 moved you as much as it did me, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful breakdowns of films that haunt the heart and soul. Because sometimes the scariest truths are the ones that make us question who we really are, and whether the monsters we fear are simply reflections of ourselves.